Good evening. Welcome to New Indian Express. I am with Ambassador Shringla. Ambassador Shringla needs actually no introduction. He has been our ambassador to the United States. He has been India's High Commissioner in Bangladesh. He has served in many other missions. He was also country's foreign secretary and coordinator for G20. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Jayant.
So there is a lot of interest after Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US, especially when it comes to trade and tariff. As somebody who has tracked these developments over a period of time, how do you see the announcement of reciprocal tariff? Especially, sir, this differential and preferred tariffs has been in system for some time now. For example, developing countries always had this kind of a tariff system. When America goes for a reciprocal system, how do you see this playing out?
Let me start by saying that, the visit on the whole has been very comprehensive, and trade is one aspect of it. In terms of, President Trump's approach to the issue of tariffs, I think he is non-discriminatory. Both friends and foe alike have been covered under his, let's say, quest for a certain level of parity and a sense that America is being exploited in terms of its trade and trading and trade preferences agreements and understanding. So I think this is really, in a certain sense, is the end of the WTO era, in which you had a certain formula that allowed a certain amount of preferential access to developed country markets from the developing world. I've of course had a ringside view with President Trump's first term in office, and my own sense is that his stated view is that the countries like India, Turkey, a number of other countries that are within his ambit are not developing countries. They're actually developed countries, and they don't really deserve any preferential access to the US market. So as far as he's concerned, he wants parity in terms of trade. And, like it or not, the US is one of the largest markets. It is the largest market in the world for any country. It's not just India. I mean, look at Canada, Mexico, governments that have been, in many senses, liberal administrations have also, to some extent, succumbed to that pressure and have really accommodated the requirements that President Trump has imposed on them. So, in a certain sense, that if we are to continue our, trade arrangements with the United States, which is very favorable to us, after all, we have between a $35 and a $46 billion surplus with the United States, and one that we don't enjoy with too many countries. We have to make the necessary, adjustments in terms of the way we look at that bilateral trade per force. I'm not saying that it is something that we are doing voluntarily. It is per force that we have to meet the requirements. Otherwise, you obviously face the issue of keeping on raising tariffs reciprocally, and it's a zero-sum game. But obviously nobody wants a zero-sum game with a partner like the United States. So you've got to make that adjustments. And I think Prime Minister Modi's visit has illustrated amply that we are ready to make adjustments that are necessary, but it has to be on terms that are acceptable to us. That's very important. And that's how I see it. I mean, all the aspects of that visit and the decisions that flow from that visit are in line with our basic understanding that, yes, we are ready to make the adjustment necessary, but it has to be on terms that we are comfortable with.
Sir, how realistic is this target of 500 billion trade by 2030 between the United States and India?
Well, it's a very ambitious target because, the current figure is at about $140 billion. So you're talking about more than doubling that figure. And I think, it is going to be a very tall task. But as some observers have pointed out, there are low-hanging fruits which we can go for. I think this multi-sectoral, mutually beneficial free trade agreement and that partial agreement that can come into effect by September might actually provide more market access to both countries and thereby giving a spurt to trade. Also, it depends on his relationship with other countries. For example, he's already increased tariffs on China by another 10%. Remember that he had increased it by 25% in his first term in office. Right. So altogether, you're talking about a 35% additional tariff on all Chinese products, which gives our exporters a good window of opportunity. If you can't exploit that 35% margin, then you're not competitive. So you need to exploit that. You need to get in, and don't forget the rupee is also low right now. So that gives you an advantage in terms of accessing markets. Your goods become more competitive. So I think our exporters should use this window of opportunity to look at to look at openings that come up in that period of time, and make the best of it. So there are silver linings in everything, and I think here also we have opportunities that we can make use of, optimize that window, go for a very, as I say, mutually beneficial partial free trade agreement by September, and then work on a comprehensive free trade agreement with the United States, in on a medium to long term basis. And I think that's a game that should be a game plan, and that should keep us really off this issue of tit for tat, tariff increases.
So you would know is that better than most people. Like the first term of Trump, also there was a talk about bilateral trade agreement. It didn't take off. So you think this time things will be different, and it can actually happen within the time frame that we are looking at?
Yeah, I think definitely, because we have, even when Trump visited India in February 2020, we had the basis for a partial free trade agreement on a here is where is basis, in the sense that we would conclude it on as is where is. I mean, whatever there was, and I think we could certainly take what is already agreed and build upon it. We still have another 6 months to go, and I think both sides should get down to negotiating that partial free trade agreement as quickly as possible. I mean, it's a window of opportunity which we should make the best of. We should not get caught up in bureaucratic wrangling and red tapeism. I think the first, negotiation, the first free trade agreement had a lot of that, and we need to cut through that and get to wherever it gets us the best results. That's my sense.
So one of the areas which is being cited to bridge the trade deficit is energy cooperation. Like we will be buying more oil and gas from America. So since the buying of oil and gas is always linked to geopolitical development, like for example, some changes happen, you can buy more from Russia at a very competitive price. So committing a certain amount of buying oil and gas from America, will it upset your entire market dynamics in India, considering India is mostly an exporting country?
So look, we are already importing 60 to 70% of our energy requirements, from abroad, and as a result of that, I think it gives us some leeway to import from various countries. What is important is that we diversify those sources of import. We don't depend too much on any one market, whether it's Russia or the Middle East. I think what we have found is that US crude and LNG is both price competitive, and it suits our refineries. It's light crude, like Basra Light. So it has been proven to be competitive, and I think there is scope to significantly ramp up those imports, especially if there is this possibility of a second or third generation sanctions on Russia come into place, which will put the entire Russian tanker fleet under sanctions. In such a case, under unilateral sanctions by the United States, in such a case, I think we should have a plan B and a plan C ready, and this is where it comes in handy. In any case, even if we are importing from Russia, there could be some scope to diversify, from the Gulf, from other places where we sort of need to make sure that we spread our risk as much as possible. So the US emerging as a major supplier of oil and gas, I think, is not too far-sighted an objective. I think it is possible to attain that, provided, of course, it is on terms that, as I said, we are comfortable with, and there is a mutual benefit in that arrangement.
So you have seen Trump in first term in office. Now you are watching him in the second term. How different Trump is when it comes to his relationship with India, America's relationship with India?
Well, I think he seems to have re-established that close connect with Prime Minister Modi, which was reminiscent of Howdy Modi and Namaste Trump. In fact, the album that he presented Prime Minister Modi was on those events. So his memories of India are very warm, very positive, and I think the Prime Minister's reception of him in India when he came in 2020, and I was Foreign Secretary at that time, I think was quite exceptional. So Trump remembers that very fondly, and that has been the basis for very positive exchanges between the two of them, from what I could see on this visit as well. And I think we have to build on that goodwill by creating synergies between our economies, between at the people to people level in a manner that will take that relationship forward significantly. And I think what is extraordinary is that this visit has achieved a lot of that. Within 25 days of the Trump administration, I think we have concluded a very, very far reaching series of agreements and understandings, as we see from the joint statement and the Prime Minister's own press statement. And I think this is really that we have moved very quickly. We have done very well in terms of what we've been able to achieve. And I think there's a lot now, there is a lot more implementation involved. There is, the two leaders have, expressed a certain vision, whether it is compact, whether it is trust, whether it is other areas, of initiatives and agreements that have been concluded during the visit. Those require very effective implementation on the ground. And here, I think, is where, wherein lies the nub. In other words, we have to ensure that that implementation is very swift, very effective. And as I said, it should, cut across red tape and any bureaucratic obstacles to achieve our common objective of taking that relationship significantly forward. Because I don't think we will have many opportunities as the one that has been secured in the Prime Minister's, recently concluded visit to the United States.
So when it comes to nuclear cooperation, in commercial terms, it was a non-starter. Of course, India had benefited a lot from the Indo-US nuclear deal, but no commercial contract was signed, and didn't actually take off on the ground. Now we are talking about small modular reactors, etc. With the kind of things happening in India in terms of legislative changes, do you think nuclear cooperation between these two countries will take off now in commercial terms?
Well, one reason why that nuclear cooperation didn't take off, despite the fact that a special, space was carved out for India by the United States through the 123 agreement and the nuclear agreement of 2008, was that the Nuclear Liability Act, I think, made it difficult for US investments to come into the civil nuclear energy sector. And I mean, there is in the joint statement a commitment to amend that act and make it, suitable for foreign investors, including American investors. And I think that will bring in, a range of American companies on advanced nuclear reactors, small modular reactors, normal, nuclear energy programs. And I think that's very important, considering that, in our green energy mix, nuclear is going to be very, very important. You cannot run your grid based on solar energy and wind energy. You have to bring in hydro. You have to bring in nuclear energy. And I think that is a very critical part of what we are trying to achieve. And without cutting edge technologies, without financing, I think that will be very difficult. And this is very welcome development in terms of what we're seeking. And after all, small modular reactors can replace existing, coal-fired thermal plants, which are mothballed, and the same plants can just be replaced with a small modular reactor, and that becomes, an effective power plant all over again, but with green energy. And I think this is the sort of technology that we need, and I think this is where the visit has made the difference in providing and opening the doors for cooperation that's quite extraordinary.
And how do you see the very ambitious defense cooperation roadmap?
Well, as I said, I mean, there is a roadmap which has been laid out, whether it is in terms of defense, whether it's in terms of trade, whether it's in terms of technology, whether it's in terms of energy, whether it's in terms of people to people connect. I think the building blocks have been laid out, and now it's implementation time. For the next 6 months or so is a window of opportunity where we can quickly implement what we have, the two leaders have committed to doing. And that implementation is a very, very important process, needs a lot of oversight, and I think has to be pushed through as quickly and speedily as possible.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot.